What's up, dudes and dudettes? I'm sorry I'm looking in a different direction. I'll be looking at millions and millions of directions. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of uh, strength and conditioning. For some who may have repeated this course, it's going to be different. I'm trying to set this course up to be more certification driven as opposed to it just being, it is a course. But ideally, I want some people to actually utilize this particular course to obtain a certification. I will start posting more videos and more content online because there's so much of an issue on the registrar's end with getting people in classes and me getting access from Dr. Keeler into my class or in my possession rather. So I really wanted to wait until that transition period was done before I added anything because in the next module, which is learning module 2, I'm getting ready to double up on chapters. Okay, I'm double up on chapters and double up on quizzes as I'm checking my calendar now. So just make sure that you find a study habit, a good study habit that works well for you, something that'll help keep you in the gist of everything. Okay. Use your book. Your book is in Brightwave. It'll talk about access. You shouldn't need all that. So you just want to start reading. Okay. It's in Brightwave. And we're going to pull up these here wonderful notes, which hopefully you may or may not see me no more. I got to see myself. So, all right. So now when we're talking about structure of body systems, first, let's go over the quiz. All right. So if you didn't do so well on the quiz, don't beat yourself up. I will provide many opportunities for you to make good on your quiz. Okay. So I won't let some of you guys sit on that 50 or 75 or even a 25. Okay. It's just an opportunity for you to really review what areas you need to know. In the announcement, I mentioned that it's these first few chapters, it's a good opportunity to relearn exercise physiology, biology, kinesics, and biomechanics. Okay. And I'll talk about terms and the best way to learn terms. I learned terms using these flashcards. That's the only way you'll be able to learn this content because from learning modules 3 and 4, it's going to be how do you apply it? Okay, and we're just going to go full speed ahead. All right. So first things first, make sure I pull out my notes and make sure I stay on track and don't bore you guys to death. All right. So we're talking about the quiz you just took, right? So I just want you to be mindful. This is just an overall overview of body systems. Okay. Now the quiz. Now, sorry, I was looking at something like what? All right. So now the quiz questions. All right. It talks about, the atrioventricular node. Now, as in your book in page 13, where it talks about the atrioventricular or the AV node delaying impulses before it travels to the ventricles. Okay. So you need to know the cardiac cycle. You may have learned that in biology. You probably learned in exercise phys. That's when the two come together. All right. So it's ideal for you to learn the cardiac cycle, especially when you're dealing with clients or students who might be taking medication, who might have a cardiovascular issue, or being able to, in terms of testing and measuring, it's good to know the cardiac cycle in terms of kind of a cardiac output standpoint. Okay. So definitely take time to check out your book on page 13 and really review the cardiac cycle as well as the respiratory system and the process of breathing. Okay, a few things that you need to know as far as the cardiac cycle and breathing is concerned, even blood flow is concerned, is how nutrients travel, throughout the body. Okay, that is one important concept you need to know, especially when we move forward in the chapters when we talk about supplementation and nutrition. Okay, so it's good to know how nutrients travel throughout the body. All right, so we talked about muscle fibers too. You should know this, right? Maybe from kinesics, maybe from exercise phys. Yes, there are 2 types of muscle fibers. They're type 1 and type 2. Okay. Those are the 2 types of muscle fibers. Now, type 2 has 2 classifications, type 2A or type 2B, sometimes 2X, they can be used interchangeably. All right. Just you need to know that sometimes in type 1 and type 2, you can find that in many sports. Okay. And another thing to note is that type 1, it's slow. It doesn't get tired as quickly. It's mostly for those long term activities. Okay. As opposed to type 2 is a little different. It's for those shorter bursts of energy or those shorter bursts of activities. And the 2X or 2B is for the even shorter types of activity. Okay. So it's very good to review your muscle fibers. Let me check my book and I can tell you what page it's on. It is on page, if you have this book, a fourth edition of the Essentials of Strength Training and Conditioning. It is on page 10 and 11. Please, that you might need to memorize. Okay. Please memorize and get comfortable with muscle fiber types. Also, another thing to get comfortable with is how a muscle functions, okay? Especially during an activity, all right? Get to know the process of how it moves, what are the phases, what are each parts of the muscle, and how communication travels between basically just in a general standpoint from the brain to the actual muscle to cause contraction, okay? So those are things that you just need to be mindful of. But most importantly, get to know the muscle fiber types, all right? So, and as a review, we talked about the differences between appendicular and axial skeleton. One way I always remembered it is that appendicular, okay, I think of appendages, okay? Appendages are always hanging loose parts, all right? So those are the best ways to get to know the differences between axial and appendicular, okay? It's everything but the spine and the skull, okay, which is axial. All right. So I'm trying to make sure I'm not leaving out anything else. All right. I don't think I am. All right. So get to know your notes. I have them pulled up here where it talks about the chapter objectives. Definitely go back and take notes. I know this is stuff that you just don't want to re-review again. You might have a dark, scary past with it. Please do so with the book wide open. All right. Do not get discouraged. This stuff, it's content heavy, but it is to your benefit. Oh, so glad I saw that. Definitely get to know your joints and get to know, as also it talks about vertebral column, muscular system, but also reacclimate yourself with directions. You have contralateral, ipsilateral, bilateral, okay? I'll just go ahead and name them for you as I'm looking at my notes, all right? Remember superior, inferior, anterior, posterior, medial, lateral, bilateral, ipsilateral, okay? Ipsilateral means on the affecting same side, all right? And contralateral is different sides, okay? Remember ipsilateral, contralateral, okay? Intermediate, proximal, distal, superficial, and deep. All right. I'll read this for you one more time in my notes just to make sure you guys are on the money with these tests. All right. Superior, inferior, anterior, posterior, medial, lateral, bilateral, ipsilateral, contralateral, intermediate, proximal, distal, superficial, deep. Okay. Now, one thing I want you to know or remember is that superior is also cranial. Okay. Inferior is also caudal. Okay. Caudal. All right. Anterior is also ventral and posterior is also dorsal. Okay. So those are things that you should definitely reacclimate yourself with over time. Watch this video over and over and over and over again until you remember identifying parts of the body. Okay. Another thing to also remember, even though it just talks about for chapter 1, where we go over the basics of the motor unit, how signals travel as far as communication is, or where it travels or how it travels. Okay, I want you to also take some time out and reacclimate yourself and identify muscle groups according to its function. Okay, like I said, I try to look at my notes and try to keep you guys so you can do good on the test. And so I won't give you something totally different from the test. Okay. So you want to think about the muscles in the chest, muscles in the back, shoulders, your bicep, your tricep. Okay. Your hamstrings or back of the thigh, your quadriceps, front of the thigh, your calves, and movement in the foot with dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. Know those two. All right. Get to know flexion, extension, abduction, which we know is away from the midline, adduction, which we know is towards the midline of the body. All right. So get comfortable with knowing those areas. I will say this. I will put some information in there in the future examinations about programming as far as kind of a two-side situation in terms of programming, like thinking about the chest and back, okay, and thinking about the bicep and tricep, as well as the hamstring and the quadriceps. And as much as we don't want to go back to learning about kines all over again, make sure that you know all four muscles that make up the quadricep and all three, primarily three, that make up the hamstring. Okay. So those things are important. Let me make sure I'm not leaving anything out for you. Oh yeah, I forgot. Make sure you adduction and abduction and adduction. I think I mentioned that. All right. And that's pretty much it. All right. So, what I will do is that I'll put up different pieces of information that'll kind of help you identify muscle groups with its function, but I'll tie it to some exercise. Okay. Won't be any grade, but you'll get extra points if you're able to complete those tasks. Okay. So if you have any questions, make sure that you let me know. Don't wait for a test, which is next week. Okay. Don't do that to yourself. That'll be very bad. All right. And I'll post additional videos about more content in this particular learning module. Peace.